What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 24 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and thanks so much to everybody for tuning in this week to this week's edition of Bettin N Boozin, covering the All Stakes Pick 5. Excuse me, I'm so used to saying late Pick 5. The All Stakes Pick 5, starting in race 3 at Penn National this Friday for Penn Mile Day. Going to be a great card. A lot of great horses shipping over to Penn National for one of their big days in the midst of everything. The Triple Crown season's still fully in swing, with next week being the Belmont Stakes and everything going on with that. Stephen Foster Day on Saturday, which I will talk about as we get into our peripherals here before we get into the actual show. But I see a lot of people watching. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you guys are new here, please go below the video player and hit subscribe. We're slowly gaining those subscribers back again through this Triple Crown season, and hope to carry it through, Haskell, Travers, and ultimately all the way up to Breeders' Cup 2023. If you guys are brand new, like I said, down below, hit that red button and subscribe. It really helps us out, and it keeps pushing these shows out and the channel in general to the YouTube algorithm, which will hopefully get more people in here watching these shows. And also, same thing with the like button down below. Hit that as well. That also puts the algorithm out to a bunch of new people, and hopefully, like I said, we can continue to build the viewership as it has been building and building all throughout the spring. So again, guys, thanks so much for that. If you guys are more of audio listeners, please tune into Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Those are the three main audio platforms that we use, that we post every single show, not only just Bettin N Boozin, but the flagship show and any other shows that we have throughout the week. Live shows, recap shows, anything like that, all go on audio as well. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor, if you're interested for there. The Power Picks, guys, breaking news from today: if you subscribe to the Power Picks, next week you will get 2 editions for of the Power Picks for Belmont Stakes weekend. It is going to be an absolutely fun, action-packed weekend full of Grade 1, Grade 2 stake races. As we all know, last year for the Belmont Stakes Festival, they had 9 Grade 1s on Belmont Stakes Day, which is absolutely unbelievable. But if you subscribe now through, I believe, next Tuesday or Wednesday, you will get both blowout editions of for the Belmont Stakes weekend. And again, it's only $4 a weekend, $15.99 a month, which is how Patreon bills it every month. The ROI continues to climb. We're around $2.40 for the 2023, $2.59 for all of 2022. That is almost $1 over the national average horse player for ROI. This can be subscribed to by patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Again, very affordable. We strike at a higher rate. There's no better time to do it than now, as Belmont Stakes is going to be an absolute blowout edition. So if you go over there, please, we really appreciate it. And thank you to the best sponsor that sponsors not only this show of Bettin N Boozin, but every single show of Bettin N Boozin. BetUS is a fantastic casino and sports betting platform that offers up to 200 games a day of live betting, plus 300 to 400 different props. If you are interested in depositing money, please use our code RACING3H, and when you deposit $100 or more, you will get a free 125% back. Again, that's code RACING3H for BetUS. Thank you just so much to them for sponsoring this episode. And if you want to see previous editions of the Power Picks, anything about us, it will all be on our great website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Guys, I see the chat exploding right now. If you did not see on Twitter, and you can see by my tag below here, I did get engaged this past weekend to the beautiful Emma. We did it in Disney. I will get to your comments now before we get into the show, but absolute best day of my life, guys. Like, it could not have gone any more perfect. I see a bunch of people asking how I did it. I'll give the brief synopsis here as I go through. Nick Feldman, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. He loves a horse in this weekend sequence. We'll see if we can pick it out here through the analysis. Michael Austin looked at the sequence only for the show. Michael, again, one of our most astute viewers, man. Greatly appreciate it. But This is a pretty good sequence, honestly. I mean, there's some Pennsylvania bred stakes in there, but still, it's all stakes, 6 stakes, 5 on the turf. It's going to be an absolute great, or 4 on the turf, excuse me, but it's going to be a great card. Trish Smith says, congrats on the engagement. How did you do it? Trish, one, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We did it in Disney World, hence the hat, of course. We did it Disney World in Florida, in Orlando, Florida. At the Magic Kingdom, if you are at all familiar, when you first walk in, there's a train station, and the platform overlooks all of Main Street and the castle. Did it up there in the viewing pleasure of 7 of our friends, excuse me, of our best friends. And as she didn't know at the time, my family and her family all showed up to witness the moment. And when I tell you it couldn't have gone any better, it really could not have gone any better. We walked up there. We were trying to figure out a way. Thank you to Gray, one of our best friends, for leading the charge. That he'd never been to Disney before. So he's like, why do we go up there? I want to ride the train. So we ended up walking up there, tried to decide how to get me and Emma by ourselves. And thank you to the lovely people on the platform already asked Emma for her to take a picture of them while they were up there. And that just got her by herself, and she turned back around, and I was sitting right there at the beautiful ring. If you are interested at all, I have pictures up on Twitter. It was absolutely it was unbelievable. Truly the best day of my life, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her. So thank you to all who said it. Congrats. I'll go through them in the chat right now and on Twitter. Like I said, just the biggest moment and the best day of my life so far. And like I said, I can't thank you guys enough. So really, really appreciate all of it. Barry O'Brien, congrats again on your engagement. Where to take place again, Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Barry, thanks so much for doing the show, and thanks so much for the congratulations. Really appreciate it. Steven Vanderbrook, welcome to the show. Smash that like button. Appreciate Steven a lot. Major Dude is his single for Michael Austin. Spoiler, I did not go that route, but you definitely can go that route, as he definitely looks to be the best in that race. Jim Ballars, think you might call me to see what's up instead of save someone else a ring. Jim, I love that. That's such a good line. But yes, I did doing that. Nick Feldman, thanks so much again. Appreciate the congratulations. Simon O'Neill, you're killing with these late starts. Hey man, I apologize. I know you're in the UK. We'll talk to Howard. Howard starts at 7:00. We could maybe try and push it up forward a little bit, but I know down in the UK out there, it's probably like 2 or 3 in the morning. So, but Simon, all the best. Greatly appreciate it. You tuning in from out there at really late at night. Nick Feldman says he watched Royalty Interest, thinks he's going to be a star. Push button. Hey, like I said, we'll get into her as well, but there's definitely some very big opinions on her coming up to this show as well. Simon O'Neill says congratulations. Stephen Vanderbrook says congrats. Marv, I don't think I've seen your name before, my friend. Thanks so much again for the congratulations. Wait, was this better than meeting Howard, Steve? Hey, I can't say that on the record. I mean, meeting my future wife is obviously always going to be up there, but what Howard's been able to do for me with this podcast and everything else, I mean, you could see the Jiper was not him, but the Breeders' Cup was him right here for Keeneland. I mean, just even slightly edged by the future wife, of course. But thanks, Steve, for comment. Greatly appreciate it. Penn State Scout, of course, says congrats. Thank you all so much for all the congratulations again on Twitter and here. It means the world to me, considering that, it's the biggest moment of my life so far. And I don't know if anything will ever top it, but hopefully the wedding will top it, guys. But we're going to get into this right now. Enough further along. Joseph, I'll say thanks so much again, man. Greatly appreciate it. I don't think I've seen your name before either. If you have been, I apologize, but it's been an absolute whirlwind of the past few weeks. So cheers to everybody out there that's joining the show here and later. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we're going to get right into the sequence right now. But first, Patrick has a job obligation to go to, so unfortunately, I will still have his picks up, but unfortunately, he will not be on the show tonight. But everyone's favorite is still here while he can get it in from the Ohio State University, now from the streets of Chicago. Charlie Freeman. Charlie, what's up, my friend?
What's up? It's good to be here. Yeah, I was already saying, in our chat to Patrick that it's a good thing I'm here now to keep somewhat of a streak of us still having somebody here at least because I know in a few weeks, unfortunately, it's gonna have to be you two holding it down. But yeah, I think us two can do just fine. We've done it before. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. And I mean, man, you know, it comes down to it whether, people like it or not. People probably wouldn't want me to just blabber on by myself. So I appreciate you having at least a little bit of color commentary for me
Yeah,
uh
absolutely.
coming through. But I mean, like I said in this is a pretty decent sequence. This is one of Penn National's big days, if not one of their biggest day. They get a lot of ship-ins. Obviously, you still have some Pennsylvania bred stakes that are on the card. That being the third, and I believe the last stake, the seventh, I believe, is also a Pennsylvania
Yeah,
bred stake. But still, the really good sequence, lots of good races. Irad's there on Friday, Flavian Pratt's there on Friday, and a bunch of other jockeys as well. So, without further ado, Charlie, let's get into this shiz as I move to our picks right now. The first race, arguably, I think you'll see it as we talk about it. I think this is the biggest standout in the entire card. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm going to add this to the stream right now. Race number 3 is where this pick 5 starts for everybody. It is 1 mile and the 16th on the turf for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. This is a full Pennsylvania breds restricted stakes race for $100,000. Fields a field. Wow, good English, but a field of 9 in this spot with the number 3 Hardy Constitution for Irad and Joe Sharp at a solid 8-5 favorite. And as I bring up the picks right now, you'll be able to see that every single one of us goes with the number 3 in this spot. Charlie, like I said, coming into this is my standout for this card. I mean, her. I'll cheers to that, everybody. I'll drink when I'm done talking, but she just looks like the standout in this field.
no, absolutely. I mean, I like you started touching. I think for the day. I mean, I know that there's obviously other races and bigger races. There's more talented horses we get towards later with Major Dudas. I know someone had mentioned in the comments. But yeah, for me in terms of because again those fields I felt like had better competition around horses like Major Dude. For me, the one race that had one horse that clearly was just head and shoulders above the rest, where it doesn't seem remotely close for me at least, is Hardy Constitution in this race. I mean, obviously, we'll get more into it when we get to our tickets later, but most people know I'm not someone who likes to single at all. I won't, I guess, again, get into what I did too much yet about this one. But yeah, for me, the 3-horse stuck out like a sore thumb in this field. Clear cut best horse for me. Love Irad being in the saddle, obviously working beautifully, coming over from Churchill, which is obviously more difficult racing. The figures match. The horse obviously has strong early and late speed, can get a great trip. The distance should not be a problem, nor should the surface. I mean, everything just seems like this spot fits. And as you kind of mentioned, if you see Irad racing in Penn, which, obviously no disrespect to Penn, but, it's not normally the track you would find him at. If he's racing there, that it's because he's on a horse that he believes he should win pretty easily on. And obviously Joe Sharp, great, tremendous trainer. So yeah, I really do think this is a great spot for the 3-horse. And if it runs anything like how it has been, she should be able to win pretty easy.
Yeah, and look, I'll go through it, guys, but there's many things I like about this horse in this field. I'll go through them pretty quickly because we still have a lot to get through this card. But one, this horse has been racing in basically only open company since this horse was brought into the races at Oakland Park in 22. 2 maiden races, one going away very easily, granted on the dirt. Joe Sharp puts her in the fantasy again behind, finishes 6th, pretty decent behind Yaguri. Comes back in a Churchill, loses the Falconet, who's a really nice horse, brings back in the Tepin stakes, loses the Wicked Halo.
Who would crush this field, obviously.
Again, that's my point, is what would Wicked Halo be in this spot? Granted, she wouldn't be on the turf, but just for sake. Goes to Fairgrounds in an open company allowance, N1X, wins pretty easily. Granted, a really nice trip, but still very easily. Goes back to Churchill on Kentucky Oaks and in an optional company claimer, and wins for fun, basically doing something that no one has ever seen from this horse before, being in 9th, getting off to a pretty slow start. I love that this horse is versatile. I love that this horse has only been racing in open company, has a win on the turf, now comes back to Pennsylvania bred company. Like, in my opinion, if this horse continues to improve off of 80s and takes a step forward off that turf race at Fairgrounds, I think this horse is, like I said, it's my standout for the entire card. As long as Sharp has her ready, which it looks like by the works, but this horse has every sign to me saying go, go, go.
Yeah, the one other thing I wanted to touch on, and we can look at a few of the other horses and touch on them quickly. The key word for me, which is again why this was the standout horse for me that you mentioned, is versatility. Because for me, that is huge. You know, if you have a horse where maybe it doesn't have the best break, or there is someone else that's faster or closing, whatever, you know what I mean? Like the horse might not get some dream trip. The 3 doesn't need to have a specific perfect trip to get a win. I mean, like you said, if you look at its different wins, or even when the 3 has just been in second or third of the money, it hasn't consistently been benefiting from a certain pace or a certain trip, or always getting a dream opportunity, like on an opportunity. It really can win in a lot of different ways, which I feel like just makes it, for me at least, even more of a safe bet, if you will. And so, yeah, I just really don't see the 3 struggling in this race at all.
Yeah, and like I said, as long as this horse can work out the trip, I think the 3 post does this horse more favors than not. This horse is most likely just going to sit right off the pace because this horse does have early speed. Didn't show it last race, obviously, but showed it in the turf race and every other race before that. Very tactical. Irad's going to put her in a good spot and should just be able to pounce right at the top of the stretch and probably win by about 3. At least that's my full envision for this race. Because while I
think you'll be lucky to get even money. I don't even think you'll get even money on this horse.
I agree. And the morning line, excuse me, while I switch that back, because I do all them, no matter if I have morning lines or not. I like to do all my handicapping without morning line odds. But as I switch over to him here, the horse, she's 8-5. I don't think there's any way you're going to get 8-5. Nick Feldman pointed out he thinks this horse is going to be 2-5. That might be a little steep, but still, like,
I agree.
If this horse goes off at
4-5, though, easy. I definitely could see this one be 4-5. Would not surprise me.
Like I said, 2-5 is a steep price, especially coming in this field. But if this horse goes off at 2-5, no surprises from me, to be honest with you. And just to go over like pace figures, wise, the 1 from the rail has to go. But I mean, this horse's top is a 56, no threat. The 2, no speed. The 3, like I talked about, 4, no speed. 5 has tactical speed, and this horse is definitely in the mix. But if this horse is going to go outside the 1 or something along those lines, the 3 still sits a good trip. The 6, very little speed, show tactical speed, but at lower level. The 7 has tactical speed, although I don't know how much speed this horse really has. The 8 really has no speed at all, even though the time forms would suggest. And the 9 has speed, but the 9's just slow. So this horse just looks like a standout from a pace perspective and a numbers perspective. If this horse doesn't win, frankly, I mean, I looked to the 6 and the 5, but there's many ways you can just go past this 3. And that's, for me, it's either I single this horse if I feel this strongly about him or her, excuse me. God damn it. But this is basically a stone cold single all day. And not to give away my picks, and you don't have to give away yours, Charlie, but this is the most slam dunk single that I can find. And I know the turf course was wonky at Fairgrounds, but this horse can win on dirt, can win on turf, can win from the back, can win from the front, can win from the middle. This horse just seems like it has the entirety of the bag, and against us, pretty much an easier field than the optional company and the allowance company that this horse has been facing. I think this horse just has it all and will win by 3 at least.
Agreed. And I guess my only angles in terms of, because, you know, there are obviously other horses in this field. My angle with the 6, I'm assuming it's the same angle you sort of went with, is knowing that the 3 will be towards the front. You look for a closer that can maybe get there late for a piece. Again, I don't think the 3 will have to worry about a closer that has enough of a kick to actually catch the 3, but that was my angle with the 6. And then my angle with the 9, again, as we touched on with what we like about the 3, I like the versatility of the 9 horse, because even though it is a horse where you can see it likes early speed, the 9 has kind of been a victim of a lot of hot paces, as you can see with a bunch of the red figures, and it has shown that it can, you know, sit 3-4 lengths off the lead and then close up and nearly got there last time out. So I do think the 9, at least to me, was an interesting horse, and I think the outside post also helps. Again, for me, I think this is clearly the 3, but those are my other angles. I just think the 9 has respectable figures to be somewhere, and the only chance you have at getting close to the 3 is you would need some closer that can just pick up the pieces and put up some sort of fight.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the 9, a lot of these horses as well, they have the question of the turf. Like, you can go through, The 2 realistically has a question on the turf, has run decent. The 1 has a major question on the turf. The 3 has a winning race on the turf. The 4 is okay. The 5 is good on the turf. The 6 is decent on the turf. The 7 has no turf at all. The 8 has very little turf at all. And the 9 has none at all. So the way it works is, I mean, you just got to try and find an angle with these underneath horses. And it's not enough for me. And racing downwind, to your point, I may not eat this hat as I just bought it, but there's plenty of other hats in this house to go around, let me tell you. So maybe we can get with some of that, but for me, I don't see anybody but the 3. The other 2 I have, I'll go through mine and I'll go through the 7 for Patrick. The 6 just seems like that horse that has the tactical speed. Is going to sit a trip like the 3. Not sure if she's as fast as the 3 is, but this horse ran a really good race at Pimlico last time out. And if she can get the same trip, this horse is definitely in the mix. Not sure, again, if she's as fast as the 3, but definitely could be in the mix. And the 7 is Peach Perfect. This is the horse I talked about that I'm not sure about turf at all. This horse has a lot of turf breeding. I will say that. If you go to George's Peach, the dam, she has many winning races on the grass. At Canterbury, Whitefish, the Grand Dam, has some good turf winnings as well. So, but the thing is that if you look at her summary, this horse has a lot of turf breeding, the dam. But if you look down, I mean, there's just no horses that have raced on turf at all for her. Granted,
Right.
Peach Perfect is the only one, but there's no turf, so you're not exactly sure how this horse is going to run. And Cupid's not the best turf sire either. So if you go to Cupid's stats, you can see on turf routes, he's 14 for 157, winning at 8%. So that's not enough for me to think that this horse has a winning shot in this race with the question mark of the turf, and the horse's numbers just look slow. So I see what Patrick's going for with the breeding on this horse and the horse that the trip that this horse will sit, but I just don't know if she's as good enough. I'm going 365, Patrick's going 375, and Charlie's going 369 in this race. Guys, like I said, for me, it's all 3, but as we go into the race, we will obviously see more. As I switch the PPs right now to race 4, I am switching over the Equibase as well. Sorry, lots of buttons. The With Anticipation Stakes. This is another Pennsylvania bred stake, excuse me, on the grass for another 100,000, mile and a 16th. I believe this one is for the boys, if I'm not mistaken. It is basically the same exact conditions, but for the boys, this field's a full field of 12 for this race. Since I switch the picks right now, you can see in this race we have the similar horses, but we are all over the place on top. Charlie's going with the 8, who I have in second. I'm going with the 12, who Charlie has in third, and Patrick has in second. And Patrick is going with the 9, so Patrick's the odd man out of. We have him nowhere, basically. But Charlie, I'm gonna let you go first again. You are going with the morning line favorite, the number 8, By Land and Sea, for Miguel Sanchez and Gabriel Preciado, 5-2 morning line favorite. The second choice is the number 2, Midnight Hauler, for David Cora and Timothy Houghton, and the number 12 in the outside for Jaime Rodriguez and Jamie Ness, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Excuse my if I was, but very lukewarm favorite at 5-2 here. This horse looks the best on paper, Charlie. Although, as I switch to the PPs, coming off a pretty long layoff.
Yeah, so for this race, a lot of these horses have run against each other. As you mentioned, it's all Pennsylvania. And for me, while theoretically on paper, I mean, you look at Mr. Consistency for figures, this 8 horse has been unbelievable by land and sea in terms of the figures. Hasn't had a bad race from a figures perspective at all, even going all the way back to its debut. The reason that again, we'll get to our tickets later, but the reason for me why there is no clear-cut winner and why I went deepest in this race is because exactly of what you mentioned. So many of these horses are just off of such long layoffs, and some of the horses that have come back are, some of the lower tier horses in this field that I don't realistically see winning. So that's why there's no one I can truly, truly trust, simply because of the fact that, again, as talented as Byland and Sea has been, hasn't raced since October of 22. That's a big concern for me. But yeah, this is a horse where obviously has plenty of early speed, but also has enough late to hold up. can go right to the front or sit just off the lead. And again, the key thing I loved about the 8 was the kick that it has shown in the past. A lot of times what you'll sometimes see with some of these speed horses is they'll go to the front or sit just off and then struggle to win. It'll always be a bunch of wins by a neck or a quarter of a length, whatever. But you can see the 8 has plenty of dominant wins. So that's the direction I went. And yeah, as Jim pointed out, unfortunately, I don't normally like to go chalk, but I know somebody said at the beginning of our show, that's kind of how Penn works, unfortunately, is for a lot of these races, there's just clear-cut chalk. I think I have one race where I didn't put the favorite on top and I chose the second one. But, hey, I'm just picking. Again, I don't look at the odds until the end. I'm just picking the best horse I see. But, yeah, I think there's a lot of legitimate horses that have a chance in this field simply because of the different layoffs.
Hey, and for all you people talking shit out there about me picking the chalk, he also picked 4 out of 5 chalks last week. So don't give me that shit anymore, Jim. Charlie's your new guy for the chalks.
But I did shout out. I know last week was a disaster, but I did shout out in one of the races. It was like the 7. It was 15-1. I said it was an underrated win bet, and it won that race. And none of us had the 7 on our tickets. Last week's tickets that was a brutal card. But sorry, we'll go back to this one. I want to keep the vibes good.
Hey, no, you're good. No worries at all. And like I said, I also had that horse as a maybe. I mentioned that in the show as well for my third spot. Didn't think the horse that was, complete fall apart on the pace end of that race. But we'll talk about that at a future time. But I went with the number 12 on top for Jamie Ness, who obviously we all know him. He's a very good Pennsylvania, basically Northeast trainer, wins all over the place, but this horse just seems to be on the improve. This race against really good competition, but has lost to Byland and C twice in these types of races. I just think for me, if there's a way to beat, I was actually a little bit surprised about the 5-2 morning line. Granted, I know what the morning line maker is seeing with the long layoff, but the 8 really stands out on figures. He's the only horse with a 90 in this spot. But we will see what happens with the odds as we get closer to post time. But this You Must Chill just turned 7, so not necessarily too much to improve on here, but the horse has raced in restricted stakes before, done really well. Again, lost to Byland and C multiple times, but I think if this horse can get the setup from the outside gate, there's a lot of run up to the first turn. If this horse can use a little bit of tactical speed to get into like the 4th, 5th position, I think this horse can be really dangerous. Rodriguez is a great jockey. You can see wins 22% of his races in 2023, mainly, I believe, racing at Parks, if I remember correctly. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or the chat as well about any of these jockey stats, as we are a little bit less familiar with these people, I won't lie. But this race, going from my strongest opinion on the card to my least strong opinion on the card, it is
Same here.
This is my spread race of the entire sequence here. There's just a lot of horses. It's a full field of 12. There's just a lot of different horses that can win. Charlie already mentioned Byland and C. We have the same top 3, actually, Charlie. We have the 2. I have the 2 in third. You have the 2 in second. This is the second choice, Midnight Hauler, for David Cora and Bernard Houghton. I think I said Brian Houghton earlier in the show. Excuse me for my earlier slip up. But this horse is really far back a lot of the time, but this horse has the numbers.
Yeah, and so my angle real quick on the 12, as you mentioned, I was kind of surprised that you're getting 6-1 on the 12 horse. I thought it would be a little bit closer. But my angle with the 12 was, again, it's a horse that could be on the improve, but even if it's not, again, since a lot of these horses, for me, the top 2 in the field and the 2 and the 8 are off such a long layoff that if it ends up being that they need a race and they're not able to run to their best abilities that we saw before the layoff, the 12 is the clear-cut horse for me. Of all the horses that have actually run recently and aren't on a huge layoff, the 12 is a clear-cut one for me. Wouldn't be surprised if other people see that and the 12 gets bet down. I just don't see you getting those odds. But then, yeah, going to the 2, my angle was the 8 horse is going to be towards the front, a lot of speed on the 8 horse. So, again, it's just like how we were talking about the 3 horse in the race before. How do you beat a speed horse, or even, I guess you could also say a presser, if you will? How do you beat that kind of horse? The only real way I normally see it happen is if you go for a closer. And so that was my thought with the 2. Has plenty of late speed, has a really strong, solid kick late. You can see that on its race on August 19th, where it was behind by 8 lengths and then won by 1 3/4. was behind by 5 lengths and closed up a little, was behind by 12 lengths and closed it to 2 lengths last time out before it went on its long layoff again. So that was my angle, was if there's any way you're realistically beating the horse, assuming you don't just use the excuse that it has a rough race first time back, that was my angle, was it would need to be a closer. But again, I like that the 12 has run recently. So those are the 3 that stood out to me. And then if we do have time, the only other horse I wanted to touch on that I think is interesting is the, again, closer base was the 7 Crisper. Crisper, the 7 horse. So the 7, 8, 12, and 2, all 4 of them had run against each other on September 24th, which was Byland and C's second most recent run. And I had watched the replay of that race, and Byland and C was able to get away, had a perfect, effortless trip the entire time. And then all the other 3, though, that were in this race kind of all sat way back together. And then Crisper just didn't exactly have the best trip, and then eventually got to the rail and started to show some late interest. But another horse that sits way far back and is kind of, tried to close into some of those hot paces, but again, has just been a little too far back, doesn't have the best early speed, doesn't always get the best starts as well. As you see on one of the comments, even though it actually ended up winning, it literally says brutal trip. But yeah, again, another horse I think at a great price is interesting, at the very least being the money, but again, could surprise off of a fair big layoff as well. Because again, it's another closer. And again, I feel like those are the only horses that really would have a realistic chance at beating the 8, would be closing into a hot pace, assuming that the 8 shows up.
There's just a lot of horses in this type of race where they're off a long layoff, and there's a big question. Like Tim Woolley, his raced 10 times this year, won once, and then off of this layoff, I believe he's like 25%. So it's just there's a lot of question marks.
This race in particular just had my brain was just scrambled trying to because I'm not used to. We're used to. I know we cover other tracks, but we're used to sometimes. You'll see a Chad Brown or Wesley, where like some of the top trainers, where it's one of their horses in particular off a big layoff, and you're like, oh, but they have it ready for the spot. But for it to just be all Pennsylvania, where we, as you mentioned, we don't know quite as much about the trainers and jockeys, and it's not one heavy favorite off a layoff. It's like the whole field is off of heavy layoffs. These races are always so tough to figure out.
Yep, and also if you notice, Carlos Marquez, Arlington legend Carlos
Marquez.
I
was going to say, I thought I recognized that name.
But yeah, it's just there's a lot of question marks with these horses. And like you said, I like the recency of the 12. I don't know if you'll get 6-1 necessarily, like you were stating. I think more 4-1 is more probably the speed. But the 8, I'm not sure. It just depends on how much money the 8 takes. The 8's way ahead on figures. The question is just about that layoff. And
right, those are going to be the 2 angles: the people that weigh the speed and the track record, and the people that weigh, will this horse be up to that level when it has its first race back, or does it need a race? And I think that's also what's going to determine the race. If the 8 can be anywhere near its best form again, the 8 should win this race fairly easily. But we don't know that because it's off a huge layoff.
Right. And the last horse I want to touch on is Patrick's top pick, and a lot of other horse and Racing Downwind said, give me the 9 at 10-1, which might be where this horse is. This horse's question mark is really just the turf. Granted, ran all the way back in 2021 and early 2022 on the grass at Aqueduct, Keeneland, and Gulfstream. Run extremely well in the synthetic since. But, it's just come to the fact that synthetic does translate to turf a lot. But I just don't know if it's going to do it if the surface switch is going to do it. Granted, Galileo breeding First Samurai, this horse really should take to the grass, but just hasn't been able to show it. And then race to Presque Isle, race to Woodmine, but again, another long layoff for a horse like this. I just don't know if he's going to be ready. The workouts would suggest that this horse would be ready, but Presque Isle Downs, Tim Gurton, I can just do it straight up for everybody. If you customize days between starts, 180 days plus, or I think it's 61 to 180, excuse me. But if I just do the math here real quick, he's 5 for 35 in the last 5 years. So, these horses that look ready on the work tab, but you just don't necessarily, there's just a whole lot of question marks, as I continue to say. And that's why, for me, this is my biggest spread race of the sequence. I'm
my
going
only,
what? No, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just my only concern with the 9, because I completely see Patrick's angle. 2 back, great race, like and 3 back, the figures, even 4 or 5 back, like it had a really strong stretch with great figures that honestly, as you mentioned, no one besides the 8 is in the 90s, but no one's really higher than the low 80s besides the 9 with those 88s and an 86. But my concern with the 9 horse is I think it obviously has to go to the lead. My worry is I think the 9 could lead this race and that the 8 could sit right off the 9. And then when it gets that final turn, I don't think the 9's going to have anything left in the tank. I think the 8 will happily push the 9 and make the 9, lead them as far as possible. And then I think it will run out of gas on that final turn, especially trying to come off this big of a layoff. I don't think it's going to be able to handle this much distance. And I think the 8 will end up just going right on by.
And that's the other thing I wanted to touch on was the distance angle.
A
this
mile
horse has
and a
been racing
16,
at 6.5,
that's a lot.
Longest this horse has gone is a mile. Granted, 2 really prolific wins, but one in the state bred stake at not the state bred stake, sorry, the restricted stake at Presque Isle, and then at the optional claiming level of Presque Isle. I just don't know if this horse can take the turf, and this horse is gonna have some pressure up front, but we'll see what he can do. Hopefully not being, if you have him on top, not replicating these turf races that he had back in 21 and early of 22. I'm going 12-8-2. Patrick is going 9-12-8, and Charlie is going 8-2-12. Guys, I'm switching over the PPs right now to race number 5, and I'll switch over the Equibase right now as well. This is the Penn Oaks. This is going 1 mile on the turf for fillies of 3 years old, a field of 9, and this is where the shippers really come into play, is the Penn Oaks and the I'm freaking the Penn Mile. Wow, that took me way too long, to be honest with you. But as I switch over the Equibase right now, field of 9, the morning line favorite is the number 5, Princess Bettina, for Flavian Pratt and Todd Pletcher. Surprise, surprise. The number 2 choice in this race is the number 9, Royalty Interest, for Irad and Chad Brown. Again, surprise, surprise. And after that, there's really not that much going on after that. Realistically, you have 3 separate horses at 8-1. Charlie, I'm switching over the picks right now for the Penn Oaks, and 2 of you are going with the Chad Brown on the outside. I ended up going with Princess Bettina, the number 5. I had to pick one chalk, and I had to pick one chalk while everyone else picked something different. But I'll let you go first on the number 9, Royalty Interest. Showed a lot at Tampa Bay Downs that last race, but hasn't come back since. Working decently for Chad. What'd you like most about Royalty Interest?
Man, I watched the replay on this horse, and right when I did, all I wanted to do was exactly what Nick Feldman commented. I wanted to be bold and single this horse, but again, as we'll get to the card later, I didn't want to do multiple singles, and quite frankly, it's just too strong of a field to take that big of a risk. But man, did this horse look extremely, extremely talented. Set a perfect stalking trip. Look, again, on a debut, I mean, of course, it's a Chad Brown horse with Irad. Can't be too surprised, but looked so calm, so at ease the entire trip. And then got I wouldn't say like it had some perfect setup trip for it, but nonetheless, ran a perfect trip, didn't really fight Irad at all. And then right off that turn, the kick that this horse showed was just tremendous. For me, when I compared it to the 5, when I compared it to some of the other, I guess, longer odd, but nonetheless, I guess, contenders in this field, the 9 just completely stuck out to me. I'm not surprised that the 9's not the favorite, simply because it wasn't the strongest race that it came out, or the strongest race for it only being a 29,000 maiden. However, as Nick pointed out, there have been some solid horses in the field, and I know also with it only running once, and the 5 running in stronger competition. I get why the 5 is the morning line favorite, but for me, the 9 was my top choice clearly. But I do think there are some other contenders in there for sure. But I feel like if the 9 runs anything like its last effort and can improve it all, I do think it is a very difficult horse to beat.
Yeah, and look, the one thing I want to put out there for everybody is don't take the Tampa form as, oh, he's racing these horses at Tampa, they're not as good as other crops. It's so not true. Chad loves to race, especially his younger horses, at Tampa in the winter. Tampa has an amazing turf course out there, and Chad has used it for multiple years now to bring up his younger horses, as the Gulfstream turf has been a little iffy, to say the least, as we all know, for the past few years. So don't let the Tampa form fool you. He starts a lot of his great horses there. Actually, Nick Feldman just commented in the chat, in Italian started her 3-year-old campaign at Tampa last year. It just comes out. Bleecker Street as well from Michael Austin. Chad does this over and over again. So this horse can definitely be live in a spot like this. Don't take the Tampa form for, oh, it's Tampa form. So with that out of the way, I just don't. I mean, obviously, we don't know how good this horse is, right? And for me, a horse coming off the debut from maiden company to open stake company against horses that are shipping which could be just as good. That being, I think the 5 might just be a step above, although we don't know with the number 9. I think when it comes down to the fact, I think both the 5 and the 9 will honestly be pretty close in the betting. And I could be wrong. They could really bet down this 5 based on company, but I think the 9's going to be the buzz horse in a spot like this, especially off of the last replay. I think it could be somewhere around 9-5, 2-1, or 8-5, 9-5, or something along those lines. It would take a lot of money to do it, but I could, if that happens, I would not be surprised whatsoever. The number 5 for me is a horse for Todd, who just gets her off of Peter Urton and Todd off of the trainer switch is 24%, I believe. I can just do it real quick for you guys here. First, after the trainer switch, apply the filter, 23%, 28 for 124 over the past 5 years. And I mean, we know Todd wins a lot, but to have a stat that's better than his normal win percentage is always something to keep your eye on. Peter Urton is a great trainer on the West Coast in his own right, but when horses come to Todd, you know that they are going to be live, and there's a lot of thought behind these horses. I think this horse can set a really good trip. I think this horse is very versatile. You saw this horse go to the lead. I think, frankly, she was just better than everyone in that race. She just inherited the lead, not necessarily that she wanted to be there that much. I think this horse sits middle of the pack with a decent amount of speed to her outside and her inside. I think this horse could sit a really good trip under Flavian Pratt and just go by at the top of the stretch. The 9 could be that good, but I'm willing to take a horse that's a little bit more tested in the grounds, which is 2 for 7 lifetime, only improving on the Beyer scale, went from 70 to 80 to 86 now. This horse continues to improve at 3 years old, coming east for the first time. I think this horse is extremely live in this spot, but I completely get what everyone's saying about the 9. The 9 is a definite win candidate for sure. And after that, guys, we are all over the place for our third spot. Charlie, you have the 1, I have the 6, and Patrick has the 3. Other than that, we see it as a 2-horse race as well between the 5 and the 9. I'm going to go up to the 1, Violet Gibson for Safi, and Tyler Connor, I believe is his name. But I mean, this horse has done nothing wrong at Gulfstream, although came up a little short last time in May.
Yeah, so again, another one where I watched both replays, and again, Violet Gibson just stood out to me so strong, mainly from the debut. Had to start on the rail, which normally is a huge no for a first-time starter. Very difficult. They tend to struggle a lot, but ran in a very solid 70,000 maiden race at Gulfstream. Had an unbelievable kick on that final turn and just came blowing by. It really looked like LeBeau, I think was the name, LeBeau was the horse that got by Type U, was the heavy favorite. It looked like it was going to win. And then all of a sudden, Violet Gibson just comes flying by. And then last time out, it was just tough competition. Obviously not an easy field by any means. 2 more strong horses. And honestly, I just think the horse left itself a little too much to do late. And the problem was, I mean, you can see from the figures, basically ran the same type of race as last time out, but since the competition stepped up, kind of couldn't afford to be quite that far off. I think that's the big thing that it's going to come down to with the 1. The late speed doesn't worry me. The question is going to be, does the 1 have enough early speed to be competitive? But again, for me at 8-1, I like the value. You'll probably get around those odds. I see this horse more as one that could just close into the pace and finish picking up the pieces and getting the money. I do think, as we all kind of see with our odds, that this is really a 2-horse race between the 5 and the 9. And another thing I do like about the 9, which again Nick also pointed out, was the fact that Irad decided to ride this horse on debut in that maiden race, which I agree is another thing that's very interesting to me and kind of speaks volumes about what Irad and Chad see in the 9. Yeah, I really do think this comes down to the 9 and the 5, but that was the angle I took on the 1, is I do see some appeal there.
I mean, look, there definitely is, and there's a lot of different ways you can go underneath the 5 and the 9. Like I think Metaphysical. Michael Austin also touted her in the chats, and Metaphysical has a big chance. This is the type of race she wins. I agree. Like, I don't know why Jeff Hiles decided to put her on the dirt at Churchill. Granted, it was Kentucky Oaks Day. Maybe that was the best spot he could find for her. But obviously, I think this horse wants more grass than dirt. She still showed up with a 79 Beyer behind some 3 pretty decent horses that day. but losing to Breath Away by 2.5, losing by 2 to Cairo Consort. I mean, this horse just speaks to me that this horse really has some talent, being the horses that she lost to. Um, won't necessarily get a hot pace, but I don't think this horse is going to be necessarily too far back. I think this horse is going to be towards the middle. And if Castellano can work out a really nice trip for her, I don't think she's impossible by any means. We always talk about, how, it's a 2-horse race, and if anyone else loses, just a major shock. I really don't think Metaphysical is that big of a shock in this race. You'll probably get all of 8-1 as well. Just being how much, or maybe like 6-1. There's going to be a few horses bet down from that 8-1 slot, or the 10-1 slot even. But I think this is a horse that's definitely a candidate for it. Only improving buyers on the turf. I think this horse, if she gets the right trip, she really stands a chance in this spot. I'm going 5.96. Patrick is going 5.93. Actually, I want to talk about first, and Charlie's going 9.51. Number 3 is Malimu for Trevor McCarthy, Jack Sisterson. I know a lot of people that liked her on this podcast and Howard's podcast, in the sweet chant at Gulfstream, losing to Cairo Consort. I mean, look, you can argue that she was really far up, not something that she likes to do, but this horse really just hasn't shown that much improvement in this spot. She can clunk up for sure if the pace is there, but this is not necessarily a horse that I'm going to want on my win end ticket. If she wins, I will not have her, and if she wins, more power to anyone that has her. But even with a hot pace last time, she couldn't close past All-American Beauty last time out at Keeneland, going longer distances maybe. But even she just kept coming and coming. Maybe she even wants longer than this. I'm not 100% sure what to do with Malimu, but she will not be on my ticket. But if you are riding with her, good luck in the Penn Oaks. This is the big one on the card for the next race as I switched to the Equibase right now and switch the PPs. It is the Penn Mile, going a mile on the turf for males. It is $400,000 with the field of 8 in this spot, with the morning line favorite being the number 2 Major Dude for Irad and Todd Pletcher. The second choice being the number 8 candidate for Anna Delacour and Trevor McCarthy, and the number 7 behind Enemy Lines, rounding out the top 3. And as I switch to the picks right now, we're actually all over the place on top. Charlie, again, chalk. I went with behind Enemy Lines, and Patrick has candidates. So we're all on the top 3 horses, but we all have differing opinions in this spot for who goes on top. And Charlie, again, Patrick's not here to defend himself, so you got to tell me why I'm wrong. Why do you like the morning line favorite, Major Dude, on top?
So for me, I think behind Enemy Lines is a very solid and respected horse in its own right, I just don't think it's on the level of Major Dude. For me, this is, in my eyes at least, I saw this as a clear-cut 2-horse race. Major Dude and Candidate are kind of, I guess they're horses, so they don't know exactly. Maybe they do, honestly. Who knows? They're kind of rivals, if you will. Candidate and Major Dude squared off in a major race in Gulfstream in early January, where Candidate got the better of Major Dude. Then after that, they ran it back a month later, and Major Dude got Candidate back. For me, the reason why this race is so interesting, Major Dude is an extremely talented horse. Irad and Pletcher linking up with this horse once again. Consistently great figures. Consistently has shown an ability to sit just off the pace and then finish strong late. The only concern I have is the distance being on the shorter end does not help this horse. I don't think a mile's a problem, but we saw this is why Candidate does make me very scared in this spot. When they ran at a mile, that Major Dude wasn't able to close up to Candidate in time. But then when they stretched out to that extra 16th, Candidate couldn't hold off Major Dude, and Major Dude was able to get by. So I do think that is my only slight concern for Major Dude, is I wish the race was a little bit longer, and then I would be confident enough to single the horse. But it's been working very well. Again, extremely consistent. Love the pairing once again, sticking together. Again, very talented horse, and obviously is expected and should win this race.
Yeah, he's definitely the most likely winner in this spot. The numbers fit in every regard. This horse is working well for Pletcher. Irad takes up the reins. Look, Major Dude's going to sit a nice trip in this spot. There's a pretty decent amount of speed for such a small field. You see the one from the rail really realistically has to go and has done his best racing from the front. The number 3 is Only Go. There's no other way. The 4 has speed. The 5 is Only Go. There's no other way. Tuskegee Airman is a middle pack horse. Behind How Many Lions is the best closer, in my opinion. And Candidate has done his best running from the front. So that's at least 4 horses that have done their best running from the front. So you'll expect Major Dude to sit just off of those horses and most likely pounce at the top of the stretch. As we saw last week with Smoke and Jay, you can see that this the strategy pays dividends. And Major Dude definitely, like I said, has the best numbers in the field. But I'm willing to go elsewhere in this spot for a better price. Behind Enemy Lions for Jack Sisterson and Flavian Pratt. Ran the American Turf as well, just was so far back after this horse hopped at the start. And we can't show, I would show the American Turf replay, but of course, being Churchill Downs, they do not allow the replays to be shown on DRF. So that is not a feasible thing for us on the podcast. But this horse, if this horse likes to be towards the front or middle, this horse will sit just hopefully next to Major Dude, maybe if not just a little bit farther back, and hopefully has that closing kick to be able to get home past Major Dude, and most likely at a much, much better price. And Flavian, if there's anyone I want to work out a trip in this spot with a continuously improving horse, it is Flavian Pratt. And you can see, I mean, this horse is Irish breeding, turf routes. I mean, realistically, Autumn Snow is the only horse that has, Behind Enemy Lions is the only horse that we can see for Autumn Snow that is raced in the U.S. But this horse even ran really. This horse has run really well. In England, comes over, runs really well in the Cutler Bay, goes to a very hard field in the American Turf. I mean, running behind absolute monsters, including that didn't run behind, but including my big man Otago down there in 12th. But I mean, Web Slinger, Farbridge, Mostache, Carl Spackler, Mendelssohn's March. I mean, just monster after monster in that field, which was an extremely, extremely tough field. If Behind Enemy Lines gets a better start out of the gate, I think this horse may get looked over a little bit and will be easily in the mix. But for me, it almost feels like a 2-horse race. Candidate is the other obvious one. Charlie, I'll let you touch on him for a little bit before I give my 2 cents. Did get gelded since his last race in the Transylvania, where he didn't really show that much behind Mostache, Nagarok, Webslinger, which came back as a very, very good race.
I mean, that was a tough field. Again, still a solid figure. And again, as you see it noted, it had an awkward start, which is a big problem for this horse because, again, this is a horse that likes to be on or just off the lead. So if it has to start kind of mid-pack, sitting back in a position it's not used to, I just think that really messed this horse up. And I do also think it benefits from being all the way on the outside. I think that does help the 8-horse a lot. Again, for me, my concern with the 7, even though I do like Behind Enemy Lines, is I just don't think a horse is going to beat Major Dude by sitting off the pace and coming from behind. I think the only way you're beating Major Dude is trying to get far enough ahead that you can't catch up to Major Dude. I just love the kick I've seen from Major Dude. So again, my whole angle is I know there's a lot of speed in this race, but I just think the only way you're beating Major Dude, in my eyes, the way I see this race happening, is the only way you're beating Major Dude is if you're a horse that has enough speed to start in front and enough kick and enough, stamina in the tank to hold off Major Dude from getting there. I just think that Behind Enemy Lines will close up and finish third, but will just not have enough early speed to compete with Major Dude. And I think Major Dude should get by Candidate. But again, as we've seen before at the shorter distance, Candidate was able to hold off Major Dude before. And that is my only concern is Candidate could do it again. Still a very talented horse. And again, another horse that, while is fairly lightly run, you can clearly see in the last 3 efforts has shown a drastic improvement in the figures from being a horse in the mid 60s that wouldn't have any chance in low 70s, then 3 straight races in the mid 80s. So yeah, that's at least how I see it.
Yeah, and look, the other thing about this Canada race in the Denia Beach that I don't like necessarily is this horse realistically was on his own up front and breaking from the rail. This was where I really needed Major Dude this day, and I was so angry when he couldn't get there. Just Worthington kind of sticks with him for a little bit, but then even comes up to him, but still able to back it down from a 23-2 to ultimately a 47-4. And Worthington's just not that good of a horse. So Candidate stays on through a 1:11-3, and then realistically just has enough. You can see Major Dude closing into a pretty slow pace, not enough. But I don't think Canada's going to get that easy of a lead this time. And if he does, then all of it's out the window, because there's a lot of horses that on paper look like they're going to the lead, which makes me look to a horse like Major Dude and behind Emily Lyons saying, if there's any race for these two horses to have a 2-horse race in, this is the one for me. So we all have the same top 3, but I'm going 7-2-8. Patrick's going 8-7, and Charlie's going 2-8-7. And I just want to touch on real quick. Eric Trohe, I don't think I've necessarily seen your name too much, so thanks again for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. He appreciates the thorough turf breeding breakdown. Please keep it up. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Eric, for the kind words. Again, I try to cover all bases I can, even though I am clicking around a lot. So if I do talk a little bit fast, please remind me to slow the F down. But thanks so much for the kind words, Eric. I really appreciate it. Now we move into the last race of the sequence, and Charlie, this one will move a little bit quicker through so we can get to our pick 5s here and end the show. But race 7 is the Danzig Stakes, listed for Pennsylvania breds, if I'm not mistaken. It's a field of 7, and the morning line favorite is the number 1 Gordian Knot at 3-2 for Gonzalez and Guadalupe Preciado. Second choice is a number 7 Keith Senchelu. God, I can't even say my dyslexia is going nuts. But for Nunez and Coletti, and then the third choice is the number 2. These guys got game for Haddock and Charles Linder, if I'm not mistaken. So let me switch the picks over here. This race, Charlie, I mean, I had a little bit of an opinion, but in a 7th horse race, man, I could not really decide too much who to go for.
Oh no, this race was tough. I could not believe the one was 3-2, and quite frankly, I couldn't believe entirely that this was a stakes race. None of these horses really did anything for me. I mean, like, they're certainly all right, but it's tough. I did not think there was anyone that deserved
3-year-old Pennsylvania breds. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, I have the one on top. I know you do too, but I think we can both. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think the one is convincing enough to be 3-2 for me. Like, for me, the one wasn't a clear cut. This horse will 100% win this race, as the way a 3-2 odds might kind of suggest. I think this race is underratedly open because there is just no horse that's clear cut and convincing for me. But ultimately, the angle I just went with was the competition. The one horse is run against clearly the best competition, run at much harder tracks than some of these other horses. Ran against another horse that I thought was decent in this field with I'm not even going to try to say the name, for the 7 horse, way back, and beat it by 2 lengths. Yeah, I feel like the one is the clear horse to go with. I don't think it's the clear cut best horse, but for me, when you're looking at it, it's hard to not at least consider the one the best horse. Again, I don't know if it's 3-2, that much better than the rest of this field, but I do think it is the best horse in the field.
There's one major reason why I love the one. And I was thinking about a different race when I said I didn't know who to go with. That was my fault. I was actually, I believe, the second race of the sequence, but still. This horse is the only horse in this field that realistically shows that he can pass. Anyone else in this field really has not shown this capability. And I'll go through the paces again. I mean, 77-75 doesn't look that good on paper for a 3-2 shot. But you can see, I mean, even in fast paces, cold paces, even paces, this horse has continuously won and been in the money coming from back, middle, and towards the front. The 2 does his best running up front, maybe a little bit, maybe towards the middle, that's why I have him in second. But we'll say has certainly speed. The 3, go, no questions asked. The number 4, realistically, has never passed a horse in his life. Has to go. The number 5, go, no questions asked. The number 6, go, no questions asked. The number 7 has at least shown the ability to rate a little bit, like rate just off the pace, but then lead the whole way. Then, sit 4th and close up for 2nd, running very evenly. Like, maybe he has shown a little bit to pass, but realistically, nothing like that. You know what I mean? So it just comes down to the
No,
fact
you put it the exact way. That's what I said. That's how I made. That's literally how I made my top three. My angle was the one's the most versatile and the only horse that has truly shown the ability to pass or make moves. The 7 though is the only other one that has really shown that ability, which is why the 7 in my top three. And then my angle with the 3 is if nobody can really make a pass, why not just go for the fastest horse in the field? That
Yeah.
was my angle with the 3 horses I put. Go with the 2 horses that have shown some versatility and some ability where they don't have to have a certain trip, where they can at least pass someone. And then again, if nobody looks like they can make a pass, go with the 1 horse that'll clearly get to the front. And if nobody's able to pass, we'll just hold off and go to win it. That's the 3. And I don't think you'll get 6-1 on the 3, to be honest with you, because I think a lot of people are going to see that improvement to a 72. They're going to see that early speed and the ability to, win going away. I mean, beat shied a runner by 7 lengths when it raced against someone in this field. So yeah, for me, that was my angle with the 3 horses that I put in together, was the 2 horses that have shown some actual versatility and skill and ability to pass, and then the 1 horse where if no one passes, go for the horse that'll get to the front.
Look, in a race like in a field like this, there's absolutely, I have no worries with that logic whatsoever. So I completely agree. I don't actually have the 3 in my pick 5 actually, but the 3 is your points are definitely notated. I have
It's gonna
the
be such
2.
a funny race if it just holds off the front.
No kidding. And I'll probably, I'll be in my I will not be in my new apartment at this point. I'll be just moving into my new apartment at this point. So hopefully I won't be in there to break anything if the 3 just runs away with everybody. But I put the 2 in second. Again, this horse showed a little bit of ability to rate in a race like the statebred statebred maiden race at Parks. Just didn't want to go that long. So again, I'm just trying to find all these different horses that have a little bit of ability to rate behind just a go ton of a group of horses. That's why I picked the 2, and the number 4 has a little bit of back races, but realistically speaking, I don't. The Trainer's 133% has one of the best jockeys at Penn National. I think this horse is very well meant. But for me, it would be between the 4 and the 3 to put him in for my pick 5. But and then I have
the 6 on top.
And then I have the number 7 as well. We'll talk about the 6. Picture this for Michael Matz and Jaime Rodriguez. Off since 2022. We can look at Michael Matz's off of 180 days between starts. Real quick, you can see 10 for 53. So actually wins at 19%.
Not bad.
Not bad at all, but statebred stakes. This horse won a $25,000 maiden claimer, then ended up winning a $50,000 optional claimer at Delaware, but in a really cold pace, and then runs her in the Pennsylvania Nursery Stakes, and then absolutely nowhere. But while Gordian, not the number 1, ended up being 3rd in that race. This horse is working fine, but realistically, I'm going to tell Patrick to put his analysis on Twitter to hopefully give a little bit of insight as to what he's thinking, because I would love to see what he sees. I'm assuming the 79 plays a big factor into it, but I think
it's also the early speed, because the 103, maybe his logic is the 6 and the 3 go together at the front, and maybe he just thinks the 6. My only I guess on why you would go with the 6 is the 66 and 79 figures, and then also again the 6 and 3 are the clear cut 2 fastest. Maybe he thinks that the 3 or 6 can hold up a little longer, and then again, if nobody can pass, then it comes down to one of those races where maybe it's just a dogfight between 2 horses at the front, and he thinks the 6 can hold up longer. That's the only angle I could see on the 6.
And again, you'll probably get all of 6-1, if not a little bit more, on this horse. So I'll never talk anybody off, but the long layoff is a big factor for this horse, especially in a race where there's going to be a lot of early pace. Yeah. I'm going 1-2-4. Patrick is going 6-2-7. Charlie is going 1-3-7. First off, before we go to our pick 5s, Nick Feldman, great show. Got a jet. Good luck Friday. Good luck to you and everybody else out there on Friday. Thanks for joining in, man. Greatly appreciate all of your insight that you dish out in the chat for a discussion. Guys, I'm switching over the pick 5s right now, and then we'll end the show pretty early here, which will be pretty nice for everyone listening, as I'm sure they want to hear us babble on as little as possible. But Patrick's pick 5 is $56. I'll go over his really quickly. He's singling the 3 on the front end, then going 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9, 12, 7 deep in the second leg, which, as I stated, that's my biggest spread race as well. Then by 5-9 in the third leg, which, as I argued, was the 2-horse race. 2-8 in the fourth, and then 1-2-6-7 in the fourth for a $56 ticket. Charlie, you're going next for a $36 ticket. The old cheapo college play. I love it. Singling the 3 on the front end, 2-7-8-12 in the second leg, 1-5-9 with 2-8 with 1-3-7. Again, $36. Charlie, talk about your construction.
Well, again, as we kind of talked about, it looks like all three of us are on the same page. So this could be a really short pick 5 for all three of us. If the 3 doesn't come through, it'll be a very brief day. So I hopefully that doesn't happen. But I love the 3 again, as we talked about, head and shoulders above the rest. For me, again, not the best horse out of all the races by any means, but certainly the farthest ahead of the rest of the field. That was my angle in that race. Second race, again, we already talked about being a big spread. The race after that, I like the 9, but I'm scared about the 5 still. And then again, I wanted to keep the 1 in there just as a long price in case, because since I am going heavy favorites, I wanted to throw in at least some prices to hope I can maybe get some more value. Really banking on my value coming in the second race, hoping that maybe the favorite struggles off the big layoff. Then with the 2 and the 8, again, I just think Major Dude is too talented, and the only way Major Dude loses is if a horse in the front stays up there. And then again, as we talked about for the last race, the 1 and 7 are the only 2 horses that have really shown the ability to be versatile and pass others, and then the 3 is the fastest of the entire field. So if the 3 wires them, then I have that covered as well. And again, even though it is fairly chalky because of how cheap the ticket is, still can make some value. And then I do want to say, after you go over your ticket, I want to give a quick finals prediction since the finals start tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. I completely forgot about that type of stuff. And I'll give out Racing Down wins first, as a longtime viewer of the show puts in his caveman ticket in the chat. He's going 3 with 1, 2, 6, 8, 9, 12, with 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, with 2, 5, 6, 7, 8 by 1. So single, spread, single for $90 ticket. Racing Down win. I love it, honestly. My 2 top opinions of the sequence are the 3 and probably the 1 in the last race being how the pace scenario shapes up. I agree. Dirty Reg 22, thanks so much for joining the show. Not sure I've seen your name either. A lot of new people tonight, guys. Thanks so much again for joining in. Tough test at 2 singles, absolutely, but it's a great way to maximize your value, especially in a spot like this. Especially if you can get some prices in the interim within those 2 races on the outside. So Racing Down one, thanks so much for bringing in your pick 5. I'm bringing in mine now. $80 ticket, 3 is singling the 3. We're all singling the 3. So again, as Charlie said, could be a quick pick 4 visit for the rest of us, but hopefully not. I'm going 3 with 2, 7, 8, 9, 12, with 5, 6, 8, 9, with 2, 7, with 1, 2, 4, 7. Again, that's an $80 ticket. Singling my biggest opinion on the sequence. A wise man once told me, that's been on the show many, many times. Great contest player. You'll probably know him. His first name and last name both start with M. It says, if your best opinion hits, you better hit it hard. And I'm going to play my best opinion in the sequence, singled in the number 3. Spreading in the second race, as I said, that's my least great opinion. There's many horses coming off layoffs in that race. My best opinion, the 12 is all the way on the outside, has to work out a trip. On the third leg, I'm going 5, 6, 8, 9. If I switch over to that real quick, just so I can kind of give a little bit of that's Princess Bettina and the number 9 Royalty Interest, the Chad Brown horse. I don't think the number 6 Metaphysical is completely out of it by any means. And then the 8 Jonathan Thomas, Isaac Castillo, a horse that raced at Meadowlands and it came back at Indiana and won pretty convincingly, although in a very hot pace. If the pace breaks down, this could be a horse that would pick up the pieces at the end at a pretty big price. So I wanted to throw that horse in there. The next race, I don't like Candidate that much, so I'm throwing him out in the Penn Mile. I think Major Dude and Behind Enemy Lines are extremely tough to beat in that race, so I'll go 2 deep in there. And in the last race, although I think the 1 is easily the horse to beat, I'm throwing 3 others, as that is another race where anything can happen. I feel like if the 1 doesn't run his race or is too far back or even gets caught up in the pace by any means, I wanted to include other horses in there that I thought would have any chance of picking up the pieces. So that's an $80 ticket going 1 by 5 by 4 by 2 by 4. I know I love the biggest thing that I preach on here is maximize your value, maximize your opinions. But this is a sequence where it's either going to come really chalky or you're going to get some bombs in there, especially with the second race and the last race, in my opinion. So play to your budget. Obviously, do not go over what you plan to spend for the day, but there's a very, very good opportunity to make some money here. So you can either go, Charlie's really hammer it down ticket for 36, my $80 ticket, or even Racing Down Wins $90 ticket. There's a lot of different ways you can go in the sequence, but good luck to however you play in this spot. Charlie, finals prediction, NBA, floor is yours to finish off the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy for the Heat. Good for them getting that far. Love Jimmy Butler, Bulls legend, but it's the Nuggets. It's very clear and obvious. It's going to help me with my agenda next year, which is that the Suns are the clear favorites to win the title next year. Chris Paul was hurt. DeAndre Ayton will finally be gone. That locker room cancer will be out of there. No effort, lazy bum who's getting overpaid. They're going to come in hot and heavy. They're going to be the team that gave the Nuggets their biggest fight. And again, weren't healthy. They're going to get them next year. It's all good. But yeah, this Nuggets team, on a serious note, is so talented, so well-rounded. Nikola Jokic was robbed of MVP, but I respect that he doesn't care or complain about it like how Embiid did last year. He just wants to get his ring and finals MVP, which I believe he will. All respect to the Heat. I don't think there's much of an underdog story as they're getting made out to be. I think ESPN's computer simulated percentages are a bunch of BS. The reality is they were the 1 seed last year, but had a bunch of injuries, and that's why they ended up so lowly seeded, and then just couldn't beat the Atlanta Hawks inexplicably, which led to a weird path. And then, of course, Giannis was hurt, which helped their path. And they played an overrated Knicks team, and then credit to them with that Celtics. Almost fell apart and blew up, but they got the job done. Convincing win on the road. But yeah, it's going to be Denver in 5 or 6 for me. I don't think it'll be a sweep. I just don't think Jimmy Butler will ever let that happen. There's just no chance he ever would be willing to roll over and let that happen. I do think they take at least 1, maybe 2 at most. I don't think they're going to win both in Miami, but which is actually surprising. They've been a really good road team and struggled at home in the playoffs, which I will say I think that's a big recipe for disaster because Denver has been by far and away the best home team in the league. Yep. It's a mix of, their audience, they play well, and also, the elevation. I think that's an underrated thing people don't pay attention to is the elevation when you have to play in Denver. I don't think Denver loses a game at home, maybe 1. But yeah, that's why I think it probably most likely will end in 5. I just see it as, Miami probably takes 1 at home. Denver will win all theirs at home, and that would be it. But that's how I see it, at least. I nothing special, nothing creative, but that's what's going to happen.
I agree with you completely. I said 5. I held it underneath the camera until you said it. I had 5. If no, hey, and my best, the best analysis I have is if Nikola Jokic keeps hitting tomahawk threes from 28 feet out, there's no way they lose, and that's just the way it goes. He's the best player in the NBA right now.
And who's guarding? They're a small team. Miami's a very small guard-oriented team, and you're playing against Nikola Jokic. They're a big team, too. I think Jamal Murray's like one of their smaller guys in their rotation. He's 6'5", and most of Miami's players are like somewhere in the range of like 6 foot to 6'6". That's not that. Again, I think it's also a matchup nightmare for them.
Yeah, and look, if Jimmy Butler can go Jimmy mode, I think he goes Jimmy mode for 1 game, like you said, at home. Agreed. Drops 57 and they win by 20, and everyone's like, "Oh, here come the Heat!" And then Nikola Jokic comes back, drops a triple double, and then they lose the next games.
Well, that's a big thing. Suns beat them twice at home, and I won't lie, I started to think, maybe they're starting to turn around, and then Denver just shut them up and put them away very easily. And again, even if that does happen, they won game 5 to go 3-2 in the series, and then came in and blew out Phoenix on the road. So that's another thing. We all saw what they did to the Lakers when they had to face some adversity in LA and swept them, which never happens against LeBron. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the other thing that just makes it so scary is the fact that the Nuggets can win at home and away. They can face adversity, and they can just beat you in so many ways that are such a talented team.
I agree. I mean, like we talk about in horse racing, versatility, and the Nuggets are easily the most versatile team right now,
and a lot of depth,
in the NBA.
A lot of depth.
Yeah, and which makes it even more scary when you have guys like Jamal Murray and fucking Nikola Jokic running around, and then you got guys underneath that can still score 15, 20 points. It's really just they're just a really good team and working on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, to the hockey fans racing down win, I agree. I think the Knights will probably win that series as well. I'm not as into hockey as basketball. I love watching it. The playoffs have been fun, but I just don't know enough to give an in-depth thing. I will say, though, naturally, of the 8-seeded Panthers and Heat both in the finals, so that's pretty sick for Miami. But yeah, naturally, it makes sense that the Knights with the 1 or 2 seed, they'll probably win that, I assume, based off of that. I guess we'll see what that series too.
I mean, look, I would love the Panthers to win, even though the Knights. I'm always on the Marc-Andre Fleury bandwagon. So when he came to the Knights off of the expansion draft. Sorry,
yeah,
but I was pulling for him to get another cup, and then he came to the Hawks, and then my Marc-Andre Fleury was just solidified. But my Marc-Andre Fleury fandom, I should say. But
Although it also ended his chances of getting a ring, unfortunately. But hey, we're getting Connor Bedard, the Blackhawks future bright.
Bedard sweepstakes, yes. Even though people are saying, yeah, whatever, bite me. But we'll end with this. Simon O'Neill says, "Don't forget to watch some great racing at Epsom this weekend. Absolutely, Save the Last Dance, an absolute monster. Lord Ritterford in the sprint at a monster price. Simon's giving out monster prices out here, so be on the lookout for that. Simon O'Neill, again, thanks so much for joining out in the UK, my friend. Greatly appreciate it, even though you can go to bed now. You can go to bed. I appreciate you showing up. But and then just close off the show here, guys. Jim Pillar's, congratulations on the engagement. Disney wedding. Probably not. There's a lot of this involved in a Disney wedding.
Kyle's going to have to hit quite a few pick fives and get a lot less chalk to get that.
I'll tell you what, yeah, if I hit a $20,000 pick 5, we might be talking Disney wedding. But until then, I'll see you in probably Wisconsin would be my guess. And then Racing Downwood again. Congrats again on the engagement. Thank you guys so much for everything, for all the congratulations, all the thank yous, all the viewership tonight. It's been an absolute blast to cover Penn National for their Penn Mile Day on Friday, 6/2. When I move in to my new apartment, I'll probably be watching these races from the drive up from Chicago to Wisconsin. But to everyone out there, on a serious note, good luck on all your bets this weekend. No matter what you play, how you play, good luck for not only the Penn National card, but for Churchill on Saturday for the Stephen F. Foster. For myself, Kyle Roscoe, and Charlie Freeman, good luck again on all your bets. Have a good night, everyone.